you.
Okay. I would like to welcome everybody tonight. Before we get started, if you will join me and let's stand for the pledge and let's stand for prayer. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing.
Father, we thank you for this time that we have together to talk about the things that are important to this district. We thank you for the administrators and staff and the way they work together during this very, very odd time. And we thank you for their diligence in making sure our students are taken care of. We pray that tonight would be a night that we would make good decisions as we move forward and that you would guide us in all that we do. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right, so I have 5:01, so I'm going to officially call the meeting of the Fountain Lake School Board May 2020 Board of Education meeting to order. The first item that we have is our consent agenda items. All of the board members have had a chance to review the consent agenda items. So unless anybody has any questions, then I'm going to go ahead and consider those approved by unanimous decision. Our next item is comments by the Fountain Lake Board of Education. Do any board members have any comments?
I have one thing that I want to, I didn't have a question about the bills per se, but I do have a discussion item in that document that we get that shows the bills for the month. I was looking over it and thinking maybe it would be easier to review if it was sorted by the fund that was charged, because there are certain funds like, I think it's the 0001, which is mostly, correct me if I'm wrong, is that all payroll and benefits?
A lot of the benefits are associated with that.
So if it was sorted by fund, those are things that we really can't change. So if they were sorted by that fund, then we could kind of just our eyes could kind of skip over that section 0001, and we could get down into maybe some of the different funds where there is some flexibility in how things are spent. And I wanted some feedback from y'all, what y'all think on that.
I think it's just a sorting issue, isn't it? Because it's just an Excel sheet. It looks to me like it's sorted now by date.
That's correct.
Yes.
So,
and you know, as I try to look down through here, I don't know which, I have to look at every line item, because I don't know, until you look through each line item, which ones you can kind of skip over. So I was thinking, by fund, and then maybe we could have a better understanding of what is Fund 2000, what are the 6-level funds and that kind of thing. So we would know a little bit better.
I like that, and I know one year we had a little book or something that somebody gave us, some stapled sheets that had all the funds and kind of what they meant. I don't know if we got to take that home though, so if I like that.
Two
again, if
things
we
that
could.
I would comment there is, in my conversations with Ms. Greason, that might be beneficial in terms of, as long as you're okay with not listing it in chronological order of payment. And so that way you'd be looking at it more from fiduciary funds that, if it's a Fund 007, that's coming out of our activity fund, so therefore it's kind of money in and out. It I think would paint a clearer picture in terms of Fund 2 being your operating expenditures and discretionary measure there. Mr. Campbell, you have a comment or two you would like to make in that regard?
No, I was going to ask you to unmute in your group. Okay. Because they can't hear anything.
Okay. And I thought they were following by Facebook, but I apologize.
That would be, they
hangout.
have to have, I'm not sure.
I'm unmuted.
2 tabs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a problem. So just in clarity, to repeat that conversation centered around the bills and the funds that we hold. And so we'll look at that for next month and see if we can sort them in a different way, funds 1 through 7.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Okay. We will move on to the superintendent's update. So Dr. Murphy, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, if you look at the superintendent update, as we're moving here, item 3A in year-to-date summary, you can kind of see how we are moving through the year, nearing completion of definitely the third quarter of what our fiscal year will hold, and you can see the April beginning balance, ending balance, but more importantly, you can kind of analyze year-to-date. In total of all funds, we opened with $6.1 million and closed the month with $5.5 million as a whole. Looking at that as a reflective document, the other document that you have is kind of tracking the overall expenses. This is a fund breakout of funds 1, 2, and 4, which covers the majority of salaries and benefits and supplies. So you get to see that running total year to date on expenditure report. If you look at the bottom portion of that, we've spent approximately 70% of the overall salary and benefits within the budget, roughly 83% of the supplies, other related services, and our debt service is almost paid in full, right at the 90% threshold. So that's two financial reports that are always linked in. Is there any questions regarding either of those reports? I have some other related comments to mention. Any questions on financials?
Well, there'll be a couple items that will be under budget due to utility cost, and I'm sure the supplies, there'll be some like copier cost and those items that we'll have to take into consideration next year that, you know, when you're rebuilding that budget, I don't see that that's going to be a true savings because there's other costs, I'm sure, associated with COVID that we didn't expect this year.
Right. Two comments I would make there. One, Tanya has already submitted looking at the next fiscal year 21. That's our 2021 budget, our different divisions, principals, Director of Support Services, curriculum. They all have different categories they're reviewing currently, and we're trying to design that budget in the context of current year budgetary design versus next year versus the reductions. Because if we do get to have a full normal year next year, those expenditure line items will run similar in nature. And so that would be one comment. The other comment is Hayden and Mr. Campbell are assisting me in keeping a very detailed report of qualifying events for COVID-19. It'll be funneled through title programs, but we should experience roughly eligibility of revenue in the neighborhood of $208,000 is the estimated amount for qualifying expenses for COVID-19 events. What will qualify? Anything from the purchase of PPE to fuel to transport for food service to any related event that has disrupted the learning environment and forced our hand to resort cable. We talked about that last month. So you have an array of qualifying events that we're monitoring that we'll submit into eligible expenditures to claim reimbursement. It would be up to that amount, but not to exceed that amount.
Well, and with that being said, also there could be new expenses for technology or
next year.
Things that we see as a need coming out of this moving forward. So,
right.
If we look for some sort of online learning platform in the event that we have to have some combination of on-site, off-site school next year, that online platform could be a qualifying expense as well. So it's not just stuff that we've already
spent.
It
could be
right.
Budgetary design coming into the new year.
Well, I applaud all that. I know we're going to be looking at our AMI instruction and probably have to try to beef that up a little bit because we had 5 days.
Right.
And then, of course, I think we far exceeded that. So,
yeah, and I'm going to let, when it gets Mr. Campbell's turn, what I would allude to with where DESE is at in their communications with us is we're going to build improvement plan models based on our experiences in this spring. And so we've got to take whatever deficiencies we find in the learning environment, because if we have to turn to this in the future, they are guiding us towards extending new learning versus remediation. And so, we're getting a chance to excuse me, review our successes and failures in this process of this challenging time where we had to just immediately plan, and we have to use the next 2.5 to 3 months prior to the opening of the year to continue to strengthen this plan to where we can deliver. In the event that we're asked to do this again, we've got to deliver probably new learning versus remediation from the department's perspective. So that's one item that I had listed. The second item would be potentially this time of year. I would want you to just tentatively place on your calendar, in the event that we were to receive time-sensitive resignations, potential employment opportunities, just pencil in maybe a personnel meeting. We have some asphalt bids that would be ready. That could be a meeting that we could conduct remotely, but maybe I was thinking May the 26th. If availability on a Tuesday, that would roughly be 2 weeks from this evening, and that would allow for us to take care of potential hires that we may have, or if we have other resignations. So just be mindful of that as a possible follow-up meeting, and then as soon as we move forward, I'll give you at least a week's worth of notice that could be a hangout meeting if we chose to do so in that manner. Or we could reconvene at that point in time here. I think the restrictions of the 10 is still going to supersede us for a while in terms of our ability with the guidance we're getting from the departments. Our meetings would technically be open to the public for viewing, but be closed to the public in attending.
We can't afford any more resignations.
Well, Mr. George, we will do everything we can to control that. The only other item I do believe that I want to bring to your attention is I want to commend this Board of Education for taking a course of action to secure pay structure for all related employees, hourly rate, salaried. This Board of Education has went above and beyond to protect our employee base during a very difficult and challenging time, and a time of uncertainty. As we are entering this economic transition of back to work, we've kind of extended on a voluntary basis. Maintenance workers now returning, our principals are now coming back into the office with some staggered shifts, and we're beginning to think about some potential training opportunities with staff as we work our way through May. What I would recommend at this point in time, and entertain questions, as we get to that June 1 time frame, we feel like everyone that's exceeded their 178-day contracts, those 200-day contracts, when we roll into June with our 240 contracts, if it's not a qualifying COVID FMLA exemption, an employee that chooses not to come to work after June 1 would be required to return to utilizing sick pay and things of that nature, so that we can have work with our staff through the summer to prepare for the upcoming school year. So that's kind of our plan. I want the public to hear that. I want our Board of Education first and foremost to know, and here again I applaud your efforts to go above and beyond FMLA COVID guidelines to ensure that our employees are paid in that regard. So is there any questions from board members regarding any of those three topics? That's the three things I had. Okay, from there I'm going to kind of turn it over to Mr. Campbell.
Yes, sir. Let me send a message real quick. We have listed up there the middle school assistant, elementary assistant principals. We talked with you all briefly in the last meeting remotely about making a swap on those two positions. We're looking to maximize the efficiency and proficiency of our team, playing to one another's strengths, and we believe that we can utilize Ms. Hobby, Ms. Hughes as a instructional facilitator, K-8, working with our literacy plan, and then also she would serve as the district test coordinator. We talked about having to replace our counselors in that role, and so she would pick up those responsibilities. Mr. Freeman would move to the middle school as assistant principal and continue on as the director of student services with his Spaces program, which you see noted up there has been extended all the way through next year since we lost the entire third quarter. The federal government allowed us to extend that whole program funding all through all of next year. So we'll reapply in the spring of next year for the following year. So we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's good.
But we think this is a move that will play to the strengths of everyone involved, give us some assets in both buildings that we can build on. Some of your questions last time around were about the discipline aspect of the elementary, and Ms. Hughes and Ms. Curry, Ms. Davis, the counselor, and then Ms. Wallace, the counselor,
mental health counselor.
mental health counselor, will all get together. Our vision is that we would have kind of a, Dr. Murphy calls it an opportunity room, but it's basically a cool down room that would be a place where a kid could go. We'd probably put a paraprofessional in that room, and once the kid cools down, then he or she could go back to class rather than spend the whole day in ISS, where you might have a kindergartner and a senior in cubbies side by side because they both need time to cool off. This would give us a separate cool off space for elementary students. So that will be a big part of it, and then Ms. Gray would play a role in that, and Ms. Davis in seeing what the root cause is and trying to get some coping strategies in place for those kids. So.
Can we revisit, I know the last, when we talked about it, there was a lot of back and forth. Well, is Ms. Hughes going to be called an elementary assistant, and how's that going to work? If
Yes,
she's in
they will.
class, is she?
They will both be assistant principals.
Okay.
They'll remain assistant principals. It's just basically a transfer from one building to the other, but it's a lateral move for both of them. The stipends remain the same, and they have the same stipend. So it would be an assistant principal in both buildings.
But she'll take on the duties of the testing
Coordinator.
Who does that now?
That's the counselors. Ms. Keys
Okay.
at the high school is the district testing coordinator, and she
She's the
can
lead.
Yes, and she cannot. Counselors can't do that anymore, so we have to move that.
How long is testing, I mean, how long are we talking? Does it take, I know it's not every day, all day.
No.
But is it a month-day school year? Is it 2 weeks?
Probably about 6 weeks in the spring. It's pretty intensive, is what we're looking at. So.
And then how much time is the instructional facilitator going to take for her?
That will be, we hope that that's the primary focus of her time. So there will still be some discipline to be done, obviously, but our hope is that with this opportunity room, that decreases the amount
Office
of discipline
referrals.
time. The office referrals, yes.
Does this put more work on Ms. Curry? I mean, is she going to have to take on some of the responsibilities that Mr. Freeman's currently doing, or?
Now, I think that we'll be able to see a balancing act between, we're freeing up part of Ms. Davis's day from doing counseling, from doing testing for a part of the year. So that's another resource we'll have. So no, it'll be a balancing act. They'll play to one another's strengths and figure out who fits best in which role and take on those roles and do them.
So Becky's also instructional facilitator or coach?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Well, we had discussed, my thing was, where are we with Becky sitting in a classroom? Is she there as the assistant principal observing that teacher, or is she the instructional coach, and where's that line, and how's that going to be with the teacher in that? Because we kind of discussed it,
Yeah.
and I was
Yeah,
curious what y'all.
Right, I don't, I get that, sorry. We went blank, okay. I don't foresee that as an issue, because what I foresee is that in the places where it would be an issue, then
In principle.
Ms. Curry will pick up
Pick up that.
that.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are lots of places where it won't be an issue. And so if there is a place where it would be an issue, then Ms. Curry would be the one to take the lead.
Yeah, I just want to kind of visit that because we
Yeah.
discussed it
Yeah.
and wasn't real sure where that
Right.
got,
Yeah.
in the
And
mix.
so we've had some conversations specifically around evaluation and who would take on
Right.
evaluations that may be challenging. And so you sort that out. Here again, I think the focus with all employees is improvement, regardless whether it's our best employee or the marginal employee in that regard. And so we take that on and provide that level of support in that context. But, we did have some discussions around
As they grow into their positions, because they're going to grow into these positions, can we kind of get a update, maybe into the first quarter, how it's working out? and
Yes.
Go from there if there is concerns.
Because as
Because
we
it-
monitor it, we would tell you first and foremost that this is by far the best laid financial plan playing to the strengths of the current staff.
Right.
With that understanding, you need to understand if it's not working, we may come back to you, but the next solution would probably require some additional
Right.
staffing.
That's what I'm saying, as they grow into it, we kind of get an update so that we
Know how it's going.
know how it's going at the end of the year. If we have to modify it or hire additional staff, we know where we're at.
I'm a little concerned about the breakdown of the responsibilities, just because if instructional facilitator is going to be her primary role, I mean, in essence, she's getting principal pay for being an instructional facilitator. So how much would it, salary-wise, how much would it cost to hire an instructional facilitator / testing coordinator?
Oh, if you put them together, if you're gonna hire a 190-day person, middle of the salary schedule is $47,000 plus 28% benefits,
So 60,000.
so $60,000.
And just to be clear, there's nowhere else to put that instructional facilitator or do another year without it, since we don't have it now, because we did away with them several years ago, right? And just, right for now, do the testing coordinator and not move anything around? Like, give that testing coordinator to somebody else? If it's 6 weeks out of the school year, right?
Right, but there's not anyone sitting with 6 weeks that we could see that would be a feasible option. I mean, I can't give up 6 weeks and do it. And I get where you're coming from, and I would say that what I said at the beginning, if we're trying to play to the strengths of the folks we have. I know that on your sheet over there, curriculum figures pretty highly into 2 or 3 of the things that have blue circles around them. And so I know it's an interest of yours, of all of you. And so I would hate, as we roll in this summer and have the professional development come in for the literacy program, to then leave our folks without someone on the ground to support them.
Because we're entering into this year, we introduced the curriculum in the past year, and we provided a level of support, but the expectation was to kind of grow collectively as a group. The training our staff will experience this summer that Ms. Curry and Mr. J are introducing is going to take on a new level of fidelity of curricular implementation, what each individual teacher does. We really need to be able to support each individual teacher and those grade levels in that discussion to ensure that they're all getting what they need to grow in the literacy program. Because philosophically, we're creating basically 25 to 30 teachers of reading versus 2 pull-out teachers. And that's kind of hard to wrap your arms around because we were in an intervention strategy where those struggling readers were pulled away, and our intentional purpose of this program is to build capacity of all teachers to be strong teachers of reading, and they're going to need support. And this is a conduit for support through instructional leadership, more so than it is what I would call instructional facilitation. It's truly instructional leadership. So it pairs well to the lion's share of where the load is at. When you look at Mr. J's building, yes, we're doing that in the 5th grade, and yes, we're doing that in the 6th grade, but there becomes a tipping point where you're reading to learn versus learning to read. Mm-hmm. And so the majority of our teachers that are going to have to be very fluent in teaching reading is down in that primary level, and we've got to have all boots on the ground teaching our teachers how to teach reading at that level. So that's the intentional focus. If we take a pass, the fear in taking a pass, yes, we didn't have it last year, but we've been, this is an area that we've made a priority, but more importantly, we've got to progressively build back in additional support. Mm-hmm. And it could be, this strategy works with existing finances and maybe gives us latitude to pay existing teachers because you want to recruit, retain in that role. And so the more we leverage new people into the system, the more, that's going to, if you take 3 people and put them in the system, that's $500 on the base. Mm-hmm. That's $180,000 on average, $60,000 for each one. So we're trying to monitor this in a way to be able to deliver in both elements. As we monitor it, if we feel like it's not successful, then we come back and add the staffing versus add the staffing initially. That's kind of what we're thinking.
I feel pretty confident Katie and Becky both would know if it's working or not.
Yes.
I think they'd be pretty open about we need to do something else versus the money now.
Mm-hmm.
And is this something that's going to require board action, or is this just an internal?
Definitely something we want our staff to. Our staff is being made aware of this tonight, as you are as well. But we've been having internal conversations about this since November. So this is not something we've thought of because we've had this challenge of what we do with testing, what we do with trauma-induced children. The steps that we've taken is we really put our money down on a mental health coordinator to restructure the disciplinary format. And so you've spent money for additional staffing that you haven't even got to see used yet because we've technically been in a pandemic lockdown since the employment opportunity. So we really don't even know what Morgan's going to bring to the table on restructuring. And so that is an FTE that we've already approved that we haven't got to see in the system to gain the benefits. And we're trying to do a reflective course of action. Of course, data and discipline, volume of discipline is far less in the elementary school than it is the middle school, and then looking at the types of incidents and using supportive strategies with teachers, you don't have a lot of significant disciplinary events in the pre-K through 4 realm. Yes, you have discipline, and yes, there's going to be time and place for ISS, but it's not a continuum in that context. And it really gives us a place to take restorative discipline in our system, and as it works, build it into our system K-12. Because if you look at our system more towards the secondary level, it's very punitively stanced. And this gives us a place to start building a different philosophy around discipline other than just consequence orientation.
So we're looking at this opportunity room or cool down coming up this year, and I might have missed it, I'm sorry. Who's going to facilitate that room?
We'll find a paraprofessional, which we can do for either with an existing one, or if we had to hire one
it's going to go to what grade?
15.
At this point, we're thinking no higher than grade 4, and they will really, I hate to say what grade, because I'd like for that team to convene and design a plan. And that's, I asked them on Monday where we at, and Katie indicated, Ms. Curry indicated she really wants to build that plan with the team versus build a plan in advance of the team.
We have a space for that.
Yes, we've identified a couple locations.
I mean, but the general is probably not above fourth grade
No.
at that point.
We're not, it won't exceed that primary building, and we'll keep our current structure in the middle school and senior high level. And we still will have ISS.
So Ms. Hughes is leaving middle school, going to elementary, taking on extra duties and all this. And Freeman's moving to middle school, still just,
Taking faces with him. So he's taking his current workload with him with the discipline. But we've got to monitor both buildings and listen to our employees. They feel like they can both make it work. We've had those discussions as a group and individually. I've met with each of them individually as well on this topic. So, but it is something we want to monitor. It's not something we want to do and just say, well, make it work. It's something we want to monitor and make sure it's working well, because we want it to be a very positive outcome for the school district, the kids, and result in academic gains, because it's really about student engagement. We're talking about discipline. When they're not in the classroom and they're not engaged, they're missing core instruction, direct learning, and it hurts us academically if we don't have students engaged. And so we feel like that the approaches we're using in that primary level are not effective approaches to change the behavior of a child. And so we're going to try a different strategy and utilize the that mental health component with the support, because that's really where Morgan's going to build a client base.
And I did want to throw in that we had given her a list of referrals, and she's doing teletherapy with kids.
Yes, now. But it's teletherapy, it's not.
All right.
Yeah, so she hasn't just been
No.
sitting around.
Well, I think it's a good idea. We've talked. I mean, there's going to be a lot of first graders or whatever. They don't know why they're in ISS, and
Right.
so I think that's a neat deal to experiment with.
Opportunity.
Opportunity room. They'll come up with a much better
we
name.
call that
for
something
this.
else at home.
Anything else? You mentioned the grant. What
No.
else do you have?
The other thing I would say, you mentioned professional development, and one of the things that the state has done is they are letting our folks who are home right now, if they do online professional development, like through AETN is how we pick up some online stuff, they can do some professional development now that will count for their hours next year. So we have the RISE training, which is part of the reading initiative as well. That everybody has to have at least RISE awareness training, which is 14 hours of training. And then if you're a teacher of reading, you have to have buku hours on the RISE proficiency. But our folks who have to have the RISE awareness training can get the second half of that. We've done the first half, but they can get that, and they go ahead and get that in now.
Does DESI give us a report on who's taking this professional development?
Yeah, we keep track of it. It's registered through our.
But we're not requiring anyone to do it at this time while they're at home, these teachers or?
No, we're going to give them that
suggesting.
option because we have, on the calendar, we have some principal directed days.
Okay.
And so we can begin to direct those days now, and they will count for next year, rather than waiting until after June 1st.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And that's the extent of what I have.
Hayden, do you have anything to share with us today? I know you do.
That's right. Under item 3, number C there, RDOT, kind of last time we spoke about this, updated all of you, the 28th was going to be their date that they hope to be off campus, and that's just for the water line installation, and they did a pressure test last week, and we do have 2 new fire hydrants in place. They have plastic bags over them or trash bags over them, so we did pass, and they're going to hopefully start the cleanup pretty soon. Again, they gave us the 28th date they're going to be off campus. That being said, they've also been awarded the contract for the fiber optic. So we have not had a date yet when the AT&T fiber optic, the phone lines get relocated. They'll also be moving on campus. So the cleanup will start. We're not aware of a date yet. They'll begin for the, oh, sleep again.
Sorry.
So we're monitoring that. With another thing with RDOT, back in March, if you remember, we brought to the board not for approval, but just to be aware of a tree harvesting or tree removal on the Wynn property over here next to us, the new property purchase. Been in contact between RDOT and BNF Engineering. We work with Daniel, and we just got an email yesterday and kind of stating that we're hopefully getting permits pretty soon. And that's just approval for the tree line that's on the RDOT property, the right of way, that we can harvest those trees as well. Kind of what I got from Daniel, just because the COVID-19, they were hit as well. Their office, or the RDOT office, was not closed, but just limited staff that were working from home and approving permits. I wouldn't say as they came in, but kind of as a priority. So we're kind of on that list to get approved. We're hoping this week. So once that goes through, unfortunately our tree guy is on another job site, so he could be on us by June 1st. So we're going to be monitoring that, and hopefully we can start getting those trees off as soon as we can. Yes.
Hey, when all that's done, the fiber optics put in and everything, is it our responsibility to do the paving and resurfacing, or will that be done through them?
That'll be done through them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patching.
Patching.
I understand.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect a whole new parking lot.
Right. I
That's what
wouldn't.
I wanted.
Well, I know what you want, but I'm more reasonable.
And two, be aware, we did have all this grass out front.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to put that back just because more relocations are coming. So the, where that digital sign used to be, our tentative date is again after the 28th. We'll start looking at putting that sign back. I did have RDOT. I want a line where they're going to be relocating to, so we can at least start putting the sign back.
Can you tell them where the sign's going to be located, please? They may not know.
Yeah, if you're
Ready to
looking,
move it.
right. Do you remember where there's in front of the, not in front of the gym, but the side of the gym? There used to be that tree that's been there for years. That's been cut down a few months ago back when school was still in session. Kind of the middle of the gym, but out in that old parking lot area. I know that's kind of hard. How would you explain it in a
It's
different way?
basically about center of the Bass Gymnasium
Yeah.
area in terms of that location. We'll try to bring that marquee up right there and get a good line of sight as a central focal point on the campus. We've kind of looked at line of sight from Sonic, and with how the cutaway will occur, we think that'll be a great place to have our marquee and get it right out of, because they're really taking so much towards the middle school parking lot in that area that we can't even have it there.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to place it back where, where people are turning in and out, and we feel like that's an obstruction to make the turn coming in from our main entrance. So we're going to get that marquee away from the main entrance a little bit. So but right now the marquee is down, and so that's a tool for communication that we don't have access to for our community, and so we're waiting for these utility relocates to occur before we put it back up. Is there other items, Hayden?
No, I'll just say on the sign. Edward Sign is the ones who did pull that for us, and it's still sitting at their warehouse in Hot Springs, and they will be repainting that for us for a very good price. We're kind of painting in-house, but since COVID-19, they've kind of didn't have very many duties or signs to pull, so they're going to give us a great price on painting while they have it there. One thing I will mention, when we take new power, since Energy already had their lines or a pole that we pulled right next to that old sign where that power is coming from, the new power is coming off the gym. I'm not saying we're doing a new sign anytime soon, but when we do this, and we're still pulling 10 gauge electrical wire out there, so be prepared if we ever do a new sign in the future, we have enough breakers out there, enough power to power it.
Sounds to me like this is a COVID-related expense.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's all I have.
And what's the great price? Can you elaborate?
For the whole sign removal, I think I have to go back and look.
No, the painting.
Oh, it was, I think like $300 to payment.
And the majority of your reimbursement on the property, they purchased 0.43 acres, but in that they wrote a check for an estimate to have the company relocate the sign. So we're not paying for the sign relocate.
Right, that's what
RDOT's actually
yeah.
paying for it. We would have to pay to maybe have it painted.
That's what I was curious what they were gonna do about forest for payment.
And don't hold me to that number. I have it. It was a good deal. I don't remember what it was. That was about 2 months ago when I looked at it.
Hayden, I do have one more question for you
Okay.
before we move on. And this is totally unrelated, but do we still have a bus set aside to make a literacy bus?
Yes. Yeah, I almost included pictures tonight on that.
Yeah?
Well, I was gonna wait till the next meeting just because they're at the stage where, yes, the bus is in, or we moved the bus in the shop, all the seats are out, the Advantech flooring's down, windows are all covered. We should be getting the wood floor put in next week. The false walls in, generator just arrived yesterday, 2 days ago. So we're at the stage by next board meeting, if we have a special meeting coming up, we'll have some pictures for us.
What a great asset that would have been during this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To have a bookmobile,
Yes.
a literacy bus out delivering books to these students.
And pardon?
Have you ever seen Lake Hamilton's?
They have one.
No,
Lake
I
Hamilton
haven't.
has one.
Now, I have to tell you, we have one of our guys up there, Kevin. We are very blessed to have him. He was a past body shop guy and phenomenal work. So, I mean, when we rolled this bus out, we went and looked at, hope Lake Hamilton's not listening to us. We looked at everybody else's bus and, Kevin said, man, we're going to blow this out of the park.
Yeah.
So, we're excited about it.
Good. I can't wait to see it.
Uh-huh.
You think it'll be operational by the summer?
I gave them July 1st, but they feel very confident it'll be in June.
Maybe we could have that in our July or August board meeting,
Mhm.
so we can take.
Do a little tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for operational purposes with the books and everything, supplies ordered, complete, turnkey, I don't know that I think the bus will be complete and ready to furnish books into, but for us to realistically think we could be en route midsummer, it will really depend on supplies, books coming in, how many they've ordered already. I mean, the librarians have been working through that process and trying to secure some grant funding to help support this project. We do have a $15,000 donation from Camo Kids to help with the skin. We'll probably cash flow, I would say, at least $20,000 in donations towards our literacy bus.
Awesome.
Again, another COVID-related expense.
That would cover the rest of it.
Thank you for that update.
Welcome, thank you.
I'm glad you asked that, Dana. Very nice. All right, so we're going to move on to new business. Brian, you got a motion for us?
We do. We do.
Would y'all like me to go over?
Yeah, just
Let him
read the
read his
motion.
motion
and then
first.
we'll-
Sure.
All right, motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance and delivery of the $9,995,000 Fountain Lake School District Number 18 of Garland County, Arkansas, refunding bonds dated May 1st, 2020, and other documents pertaining thereto, as prepared by the Friday, Eldridge, and Clark Law Firm.
All right, guys, so I'm going to turn this over to Ray. If you guys have any questions, he'd be more than happy to
Now,
answer
can I
those
make
for
one
you.
comment
Yeah,
for
sure.
anyone listening or accessing the agenda? There's 3 attachments, Ray, that we placed in here. The initial advertisement, the official notice of sale that you sent to me electronically, that is, gives an overview of the district financials. It's roughly 40-some pages for those who want to look. And if you really want to see the meat of the savings, item 5AC is summary of bond sale savings. I know you're going to work with a booklet, but there may be people online this evening that want to
Right.
review the documents, and so if they want to view the savings, they can go to item 5A, small little letter C, and they can then see the actual savings. But we appreciate you being here, appreciate your work, and look very eager to hear your report and how we move forward with our next steps. I'm going to turn it over to you for a presentation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I have exciting news, as Dr. Murphy said, and love sharing it with you. We offer Fountain Lake School District's refunding bonds for sale on May 5th at 1 o'clock. And just to kind of remind the board, this has been a while back, First off, when we signed you up, we had given you, this is not in your packet if you want to make a note, a 2.65 rate. That's what we signed you up. And at that rate, we had projected $453,424 in overall savings. And in the first 2 years, you got $410,963 of that savings. Well, after the coronavirus hit, bond rates, which have never done this, because it's like the coronavirus, it's just something out of the ordinary, bond rates skyrocketed. We have never seen this happen before. And so for 60 days, we couldn't sell any bonds because it went sky high. And then it started down. And now it is down close to the historic lows we were at just before the coronavirus hit. And so you'll notice under bid received, we had 3 bids, and Stevens submitted the lowest rate. They submitted a 1.94, and we had used a 2.65. So what that means to you, we're going to skip ahead and we'll come back to this page. The 5th page back, it's not numbered. It says Fountain Lake School District at the top. And the far right column has fiscal total. And if you'll notice, it has a minus 64,553.04. Does everyone see that page in that column? Okay? We're doing something unique here. We talked to Dr. Murphy and he visited with the board. We wanted you to contribute some money. And we've done this before. And the reason for that, at $10 million or more, a bond becomes non-BQ or non-bank qualified. At that point, you get less bidders and the rate's higher. So by dropping it, asking you to contribute a little money, because we were almost at just above 10 million, not a lot, by asking you to contribute a little bit of money at close, that dropped us below 10 million. And we think it produced you about 300,000 more than what you would have got if we had sold it with that money in there. So that's why we have the minus, and kind of explain to you the top line, the 224,734.29 in a minus savings. What makes that up is your payment of 160,180 that you made this month to make that bond payment. You had to make that. So that payment was being made because we're calling the bond after the due date, which was June 1, but by law, you have to have it in by May 15th. So because of that, we're closing on the 28th, you had to make your payment. And then your contribution is $77,100. We'd originally told you a little over $100,000. So it now has a lower contribution than what we thought it'd be, and $77,100. And that makes you the 224,734.29 minus there at the top. But then if you'll notice, we add back in the payment, and that really you're getting in savings. So the first year you're only losing $63,533.53. My darn glasses, 553.04. So look at the next one. This is year 1, which is 2021. You're going to get $567,452 in year 1 in savings. Remember before we were talking about $400,000.
Oh.
That's yes. In year 2, which is 21-22, we're going to give you $364,340. So in the first 2 years, we're going to give you $931,792 of the 1.1 million in savings. So we're tickled to death. This is unrestricted. It can be used for operations. It can be used on your facilities. It's just unrestricted. So with this, what's going on with the coronavirus, the cost the district's out, not knowing what's going to happen to us related to assessment collections next year. We're not worried about this year, but starting next year on, we don't know what's going to happen. This is some good money for you all to have that you can set aside, do whatever Dr. Murphy and the board wants to do.
And the
Yes.
state, can I just clarify for myself. The
Please.
savings is generated by us having to pay less interest.
Less payment, which is payment.
Okay.
Your payment that you make, just like on your house,
Right.
you refinance your mortgage, you
Lower
finance at a
payment.
lower interest, you get a lower payment, and that difference means you have some money left over each month, extra. Same thing here. We're not gonna write you a check for $567,000. You're just gonna make a smaller payment. So now you're gonna
In
have.
relation to what the payment would have been had we not refinanced.
Correct.
So why do you recognize so much of it in the first 2 years?
Great question. We can do it one of two ways. We can actually spread it out over the life of the bond, and we'd actually give you more than 1.1 in savings. Tell you why I don't like doing that. Other companies will do that. And then, let's say in 2 years, or 3, or 4, or 5, whatever, you all decide you want to refund that bond because you have a project, you need to go to the voters, whatever the need, and this happens many, many times. Well, they've made a nice fee, but you didn't get all your savings. So we front-end load that savings in the first couple of years, so you're gonna get the majority of your money. So if we touch that bond after the first 2 years, you've got 931,000 of the 1.1 million. So that's why we do that. It's a good question.
So you just, basically, in the first 2 years, what are you doing? Just paying interest only?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just-
And then you started on principal?
We'll start giving your principal, and I'm gonna show you your debt schedule next in just a
Okay.
second. But great question. So we'll go back to the front page. The attached debt schedule, first off, the trustee, whoever wins the bid, which is Stevens, has the right to appoint who they wish to serve as trustee, and that's where the school district makes their bond payment. And just so your information, normally it's somebody that's bought a bunch of bonds from Stevens. And so they chose First National Bank of Lawrence County and Walnut Ridge, and your attached debt schedule is your third page back. It is not numbered, I apologize. And as you so eloquently pointed out, Dana, on your right-hand side, you'll notice your payments are going to be much less the first 2 years to what they previously were. You're looking at $181,385 in the 2021 year. And then the next year, only $386,622, and then thereafter, it'll be in the $720 to $772 range. Now, I'm asked many times, why is it not like my mortgage? Why don't I have $1,000 a month? Bonds are not that way. They are different than mortgage. Mortgage is a set amount. Bonds is the way they structure them to sell them. And so because of that, bond rates will fluctuate. They're normally in a range, but they're not a set amount every year. Never have been. None of the tax exempt bonds are like that.
But at no point would this payment exceed $775,000, where in our prior life, prior to the refinance, that was our normal experience, if not more,
Correct.
as far as the payment we were used and accustomed to making.
We're set for closing on May 28th at 10 a.m. It's a Friday law firm. First National Bank of Lawrence County will receive $9,883,318.60 plus accrued interest. They pay interest from the first day of the month to the date of close, and you get that interest, and that's $12,557.44, less the good faith deposit, which is on hand at the district, of $199,900. You will go ahead and return that good faith deposit, and Dr. Murphy, you go ahead and do that tomorrow. But this week I would do it for sure, not tomorrow, but go ahead and get it done. And then you're actually also going to give the cash contribution of $77,110.48. And on the next page, Dr. Murphy, it shows you your total. It's $277,010.48. And I showed that to Tanya. What your total is, which is your cash contribution and the deposit. What that deposit is, if let's say the bidder came back and says, gosh darn, we said we're going to buy your bonds, but we've changed our mind. Well, you're going to keep $199,900, and we're going to call it bidder number 2, see if they want it, or we're going to rebid the bonds. So that's to force them to be good with their bid. That's why they get the deposit.
This was not a negotiated sale.
Good question. By law in Arkansas, school bonds cannot be done as negotiated. We do negotiate it on our 10th floor. I'm on 9th, which is public finance. But on 10th floor, we do negotiate issues. Cities, counties, water and sewer improvement districts, they can do negotiate. But in Arkansas, public schools cannot. Some states they can, which I like it. That way we make sure you get the lowest rate. We put it out for bid. We don't care who gets your bid. We just want you to get the lowest interest rate out there.
And it's also exclusionary for you to bid on per statute, so.
Used to could, it's a great comment. We used to could bid on it, and then the federal government decided that was not good, which is stupid, because all of the bidders bid to a service called Parity in New York City, and it comes up on your screen at the exact time of the bid, which yours was at 1. We normally take bids at 11 or 1, and at 1 o'clock, all the bids show up. We don't know before then, so we used to could bid on your bonds, and Stevens could bid on the ones they were selling, but we no longer can do that. We hope that'll someday change, because that gives you another additional bidder. So bring the total proceeds to $9,997,986.52. We'll take out bond issuance cost. That's our fee, the bond attorney's fee, the printing of the bonds fee, and the insuring of the bonds as well. And that is $58,990. We'll pay off your old bond, which is $9,901,439.08, and we'll wire transfer that to Bank of the Ozarks. And then we'll send the balance to the district. And that money is just the interest that they're paying to the date of close, and that's $12,557.44. Your big dollars will be in your lower payments the next couple of years. But that money there goes towards your first bond payment. That's where that has to be spent, that $12,000.
Right, so it's received into funds.
And that's on that next page, and I told Tammy that as well. So Mr. President, Madam President, excuse me, I'll answer any questions. The total we're looking at is 8.7% savings, which is a nice savings on this size bond, and that's reflected on page 4. Shows you your percentage as well as your dollar amount. 8.69, so basically an 8.7. So we're just tickled to death to get to you when we're looking at $400,000. And now we're looking at over $1 million. We're really happy for y'all.
Thank you for looking into that. Does anybody have any questions? Any other questions?
The only comment I would make is I just commend Ray for the communication and taking this process to the lead, and his staff analyzing, I think, the bank qualifying component, and us making a commitment to pay to get below the 10 million threshold benefited us in terms of savings. And so I just I appreciate your company's work to work diligently to save us as much money as possible, because that that was additional work you took on that technically you went to bat for us. And I just want to say thank you for working through this process. Really appreciate all of it, from kind of inception of what we're doing up until this point of sight. So
thank you so much.
Okay, so the motion is to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance and delivery of the $9,995,000 Fountain Lake School District number 18 of Garland County, Arkansas, refunding bonds dated May 1, 2020, and other documents pertaining thereto as prepared by the Friday, Eldridge, and Clark law firm. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Madam President. Two housekeeping items that the bond attorney sit with me tonight. He has updated, next one right behind you, your continued disclosure dissemination agreement. What that is school districts, cities, counties, anyone issuing tax-exempt debt is required to report their financial information to the regulatory agencies. Of course, we do that for you as part of your financial advisory at no charge. He has updated that continued disclosure dissemination agreement with some new information to make IRS happy. That's all this is for. There's no cost for this. It's something we do at any closing that we're doing for bond issues. And as I say, the bond attorney has updated, since we have not done a bond for you in the last several years. It is the latest one that we have out. And as I say, it's just, he attends a lot of the IRS seminars related to the requirements that tax exempt bonds have to do, and he's put that in this information for you, and he asks that you pass this motion. It says to adopt the attached continuing disclosure dissemination agreement. And I'll answer any questions the board has related to that.
Does that need to be in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir, the motion is to adopt the attached. It
Okay.
says, you see that one there?
Okay, so can
Brian,
we,
do you mind reading that motion?
Yeah, have a motion to adopt the attached continuing disclosure, the dissemination agreement.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so the motion is to adopt the attached continuing disclosure dissemination agreement. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Madam President. And the last item, again, the bond attorney sent is, you also have what's called a post-issuance compliance policy manual. And what that is real simply is that you are required to keep up with every expenditure out of a bond. That's a construction bond, which you of course don't have. But you're also required to keep up with all of the interest that you earn on your money. And so, especially in a construction bond as well. We do not have one of these with you because we've not had the good fortune until now to have done a bond issue for you. So this is something, once we do it, it's established, and we have this updated post-compliance manual on hand, and this you will keep, Dr. Murphy, after the board approves this, or if they do approve it, you'll keep this on hand in your district treasurer's office or your bookkeeper's office. And normally what we do is, he likes to appoint somebody to be in charge of the post-issuance compliance policy manual. And most districts, probably 99%, appoint the district treasurer. So we took the liberty of putting that in there. If you want a different name there, we can mark that out and change it, but that's normally who they do. So, again, he's asked us to update this.
All right, you need an official motion, right?
Yes, please.
All right, we got a motion to adopt the attached resolution with the attached post-issuance compliance policy manual and to appoint the district treasurer to be in charge of the post-issuance compliance policy manual.
Okay, any board members have any questions? So the motion is to adopt the attached resolution with the attached post-issuance compliance policy manual and to appoint the district treasurer to be in charge of the post-issuance compliance policy manual. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you all so much for having me tonight.
Thank you.
For the delicious pizza.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited for the rate and the savings you're going to get, and I hope you all have a great school year and hope everybody remains healthy.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ray.
Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
and the final comment I'd make on that topic, thank you to this Board of Education, because what you have done here this evening has provided us a cushion regarding budgetary design for the upcoming school year and following school year. So,
Thank you.
taking advantage of this savings is giving us some additional flexibility during uncertain economic times. So here again, thank you to this Board of Education for the work that's been done in approving this tonight. So thank you, Ray.
Do you need to say?
No, I think we're good.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Dr.
See you
Murphy,
later.
thank you for your leadership. Appreciate it.
All right, Brian. We'll move on to B.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, we got a motion to approve the 2020-2021 stipend schedule and hourly certified additional pay schedule. 2021 stipend salary schedule and the 2021 additional pay schedule.
Okay. Can we put that, do y'all want to see that 2021, put it up there?
Yeah, for anyone listening, I would want to create a point of clarity in the extracurricular stipend schedule and hourly certified additional pays. That's item 5B, A, and little I. Item 5A, 5B, B, and the little I. So that's the documents that we're talking about. Cindy has requested that we kind of look at the 2021 stipend salary schedule in relation to the 1920. A portion of this has been house cleaning. housekeeping, if you will, not so much cleaning, but housekeeping in the context of making sure that the stipend is reflective of prior board action. So anything in yellow is corrective action taken by the Board of Education that may not have been listed. For instance, the federal programs position is tied directly to the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and so that's the addendum there. You have Master Principal as well as National Board Certification. All of those schedules were in the last 2 years have been taken action on. So we're just cleaning that up. If anyone's reading the document, looking at it, anything in green is an addendum. So you can look at the color clarity for green to find an addendum. The notes on the right depict the overall amount of changes. The columns on the far right create a line that reflects the total amount of cost and the total amount of days, and we have estimated days at the equivalence of $252 on average daily rate in that context to give you kind of a cash flow analysis of action to this stipend schedule would be in excess, I think, of $35,000 total is kind of where that lands. I'm open for discussion on any specific areas of this. I want to also provide some clarity that originally met with Mr. Campbell, Coach Davis. We followed up, met with all head coaches. We've met twice with the leadership team, principals, going through this process on 2 to 3 different occasions in our hangouts over the last 2 weeks. So, from a board's perspective, you always want to know who's been involved, what's been the degree of dialogue that's occurred with the staff. That kind of provides an overview of that. And so with that, I'll open it up for whatever questions or comments you may have on any section of it. I did send a late modification yesterday pertaining to, with additional feedback, junior beta, senior beta, FFA, and I believe student council, along with middle school quiz bowl as some additional stipends for consideration after we got some additional feedback. Isn't that correct, Mr. Campbell?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And so I shared that information with the board in an email following our leadership meeting yesterday. So open it up for questions or comments.
Looks like a lot of hard work, and I'm sure that there's probably something that slipped through the cracks that you hadn't detected yet, but looks like you got about 99% of the extra duties under here, I would guess. Not saying that you've missed anything, Dr.
Right.
Murphy. How dare I indicate that?
Somebody let him know if he did.
Right. They will let you know if you missed one.
It's kind of a making sausage process and getting that correct. And so it's kind of, we've had several discussions. What I would indicate to you as board is this does go back to context, recruitment, and retainment. So, I mean, when you're taking action here, you're aligning tightly with what was one of your priorities as a board, and that is to retain the employee base and recruit into the employee base. So, but I appreciate the comment.
I would say, which I've told you, but so you look, you got an additional basketball, addition for boys and girls, and additional volleyball. So these are built in now where we're not necessarily saying we have somebody we're going to throw in there. We're just kind of creating that additional position. Is what I'm getting at is you're not going out there tomorrow and throwing somebody in it just because we have it. We're going to look at, I'm assuming more internal, but hopefully in line with that sport. And
If that position is filled, that is the stipend that
Yes,
goes with it.
Correct. One, it creates the opportunity to offer employment through board action. So we'll have the additional position available. The thing that I talked to the head coaches about is this is not something we're going to go out and hire new full-time equivalents. We're going to have to do this either internally or when we get a resignation in the future, maybe we can pair and tie things together. We're eager to see when we get to advertise this tomorrow who might have an interest. We've got some resignations you're taking action on, and we've got some people interested in filling some positions, but we really felt like what we need to do first is take action on the schedule and allow everyone to toss their name in the ring, and then maybe in 2 weeks, we come back to you with the recommendations pertaining to who takes those vacancies on. Most of these extracurricular areas, conversation that I had with the Superintendent's Association, we're under a dead period through the end of May. And so there's not really anything that our coaches can be doing other than maybe talking to student athletes. There's no organized practices. There's no opportunities to come together, utilize school facilities. So advertising first and then interviewing, having those discussions. This is a puzzle. It truly is a puzzle because you want to take existing internal staff and potential future candidates to meld the two together. Here again, we're wanting to hopefully add value and quality to these programs with the staffing model, not just place a body into those programs. Is what you were alluding to a certain extent. But most importantly, I would echo that we're going to try to hire with existing positions. We're not, just because we added a position to pay a stipend does not mean we're advertising a brand new employment opportunity.
I just want to make sure that there's, you don't want me being a basketball coach. Sure, I'd like $3,800, but you don't want me coaching basketball.
No, we do not.
No, that's what
Yeah.
I want to make sure that whoever gets in that spot.
That's what I was
Can
alluding to.
I know what you're alluding to.
Which that's a different issue though, right?
Well,
it is, but it isn't. The money's there. We want to be able to offer to somebody if they can help us out.
That's right.
Right.
But
So
you don't
this
want to
isn't-
just put somebody in there just to make some extra money that doesn't know
Well,
anything
and
about it.
And that's,
I partially agree, because if the numbers don't dictate that we have a position, just to put someone in there, but we have 2 assistant coaches at the high school level, whatever, and the numbers are down, we still have 2 assistant coaches, and I guess what I'm saying is if we have a vacancy, this allows the coach to know, and that allows the AD to know, this is our budget. We can hire another coach for this position if we find the right individual.
Right.
I still want quality people working with students.
Right.
So,
And from my seat on the equity side of things, we have to have it for
Girls.
both
Well, yeah, you gotta have it everywhere.
on the
That's
top
not a
line,
question.
right.
Yeah.
And I noticed several things like that when we get to our softball and our tennis, and Dr. Murphy and I discussed some of that the other night. They brought some equity into this.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Well, I got another comment if nobody else does. I have no crazy words. I heard this a lot last year, have no dog in the hunt, but advocating for what you hear in the community. We got a $2,000 stipend for a junior cheerleading coach. Have zero issue with that other than the fact that the junior cheerleaders never went to away games. So you're paying 2 coaches at different levels the same stipend for not near the appearances, which nobody's doubting the work. I'm advocating for the fact if we're going to do this, then I believe, and most people in your community believe, that we need to do it. The junior high cheerleaders didn't even go to the district tournament of basketball for junior high last year. Personally, I have a problem with that. So has there been any discussions around that point? I'm sure you've heard that.
Well,
before.
I've had discussions with different individuals as far as board members regarding this topic. Have we devised a specific plan of how many home and how many away that we're going to be participating in? One of the things that I was kind of talking to others is centered around adequate transportation. Transportation, we've got to make sure that we can get them there. Room on the bus. Is it solely that we don't want junior high kids traveling during the week because they're more of a Monday, Thursday, and so they're coming back to a school day? We're getting ready to go into the 7-4A, where you may have to go junior high to, unfortunately, Ashdown on a Tuesday night. And so realistically, do you want those kids, you know, a district tournament, totally a different situation? I think this is something I can visit with Coach Davis about and formulate a plan to have a stronger appearance of away games when it's conducive, but I think they've tried to protect that for travel based on those kids having to be in school the next day.
So the only disagreement I have with you there is some of those cheerleaders, that's their only sport.
Yeah,
That is what they sign up to do. So if I'm taking junior high girls and boys of 15 people each, I'm taking 30 kids,
Why
what's
not
10
take
more, and that may be their only extracurricular activity that they're missing out on.
There's no different than the basketball players going to a away game than those cheerleaders that pay a lot of money out of their own pocket to do it. I mean, the school helps them in an aspect.
Let me defer to Mr. Campbell, who was in the middle school for a period of time, and so you've seen maybe some of the rationale. I can always bring in either Coach Davis or Mr. J. They may be indicating some things in the chat column. That's what I'd recommend at this time that they do. But what can you tell me as to the rationale for those middle school not participating?
I'm watching the chat. Mark's typing right now. So I know that it's exactly what you said. It was the nighttime travel, the late nights, and I get the arguments on the other side of that completely. Part of it too is if it's not their only sport, if they are playing basketball, so you got them playing, and they're going to be playing the first game, and they're going to be all hot and sweaty, and then they're going to change clothes, and then they're going to eventually get out on the court to cheer in the second game. So you have, if you have 10 and 5 of them are junior high basketball players, you got half the squad cheering for the girls and the whole squad cheering the second half of the last 3 quarters of the boys game. So that's part of it.
That really doesn't seem like.
That doesn't just.
Yeah, that doesn't justify it to me. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's one of the reasons, because I get it that you may not like it, but that is one of the reasons, is that you pull out half the squad. They can't stunt during the halftime of the girls' game. They can't do much during the breaks in between play. Mark's got a comment here.
Retaining cheer coaches can be an
Retaining
issue.
cheer
So, but we're putting a little more money on the table, so maybe retaining them will be a little bit easier, because I think we are increasing that.
You're
$500.
increasing both of them by 500.
So I don't know that really truly seals the deal on travel, but it will help us, just like we were talking about getting people to coach 2 sports or getting people to sign up for cheer. That's probably one of our greatest turnover areas is getting someone to commit to that beyond when their kids are involved in it, because most of the time our sponsors have a kid either indirectly or directly involved in either the senior high program of athletics or senior high cheer, or junior high program or junior high cheer. We haven't been able to keep long-term cheer sponsors in that regard, but let me take it under advisement to both Mr. J and Mark to try to see what we can do to create what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to see them travel every game.
Well, what I'm telling you is what I hear in the community, and then I do have a personal opinion is yes.
Okay.
I mean, you inevitably, some of those girls, that's all they do. So, and then I look financially, and I don't mean this against a cheer coach, but why am I going to pay them the same when one goes to way less games than the other one, if that's going to be our schedule of procedure?
I'm on that page with you.
Yeah,
I'm not for sure.
I have a problem bumping it if we're going to say, well, you only got to go to this many games. Then you got a senior cheerleader coach going, whoa, I go to everything. And we're making the same penny.
and I look at that too. I mean, there's a lot more basketball games, I mean, how many basketball
Yeah,
games?
you're potentially looking at 30 games depending on
Probably 30
tournaments.
for high school, and probably what, 15 for junior?
No, junior high usually plays 20 plus.
What do you have?
State.
Let's say a baseball season, like a baseball season, how many games do we usually have? 20?
18 games scheduled, I believe.
18? So I see that the money, and we're paying assistant softball, baseball coach, you're talking about the money, they're making more
Then
than the assistant coach, but there is a lot more involved. You're talking
Right.
multiple sports. I
Coach
understand
kind
that.
of, he indicated fall and spring activities. It does run into the spring, then they have a tryout, then they have.
Right, and
I can
I'm fine
understand
with
all
that.
that,
I'm
yeah.
fine with that. But that's what I'm saying, if you're going to 7 games, because they're home games, it's a big difference.
Does
And you're probably hearing from the mamas who are spending the money to.
No, I'm hearing from the people who
I
started
hear
this
from
too.
mamas, and then you hear from fans like, "Where's cheerleaders?" So,
Well, and that just becomes an obvious, because you show up at a game and most schools, if they're at home, you're on the road, there's their cheerleaders, where's our cheerleaders? It's a real easy question to ask.
Yeah.
When you look at both ends and you only see, so.
well, I would tell you as somebody that went to every single junior high basketball game, obviously, because of my son. I can't remember a team coming here that didn't have them in our entire conference. I'm not saying I'm correct, but I can't remember, because every game that comment's made, but there's theirs, we go, where's ours?
Does
So
that-
I just correlate the pay and what you hear and see, and I'm
So
not in
give us a
agreement.
chance to put together a definitive approach and bring that back to you, and if we're not willing to commit to the same degree of travel, then we'll revisit the stipend, because we don't have to issue the contract.
Yeah.
And we could, have a staggered approach as you're indicating. Right now, we're going to recommend to keep it the same, approve it this evening with the understanding that we're going to travel, is what you're indicating. If that's okay with you.
Now, I'm not saying every game, but there needs to be some kind of involvement with the cheer coaches, the administration. I understand the Ashdown game,
Right.
I do, I don't, on both
But
sides.
why would you understand?
Yeah, you got the boys and girls playing going, why would you have
Might as well be
the
there.
Yeah.
cheerleaders going?
But I think, we need to, that needs to be a commitment at the point of tryouts, because sometimes this becomes a parental issue, those who want to do this, those that don't, and in all fairness, they've had their tryouts, I think, but we just need to let them know well in advance of what the expectation is, versus coming right into the season, oh, by the way, we're going to travel. Parents need to know too.
You said that it was difficult to retain a sponsor for those things. Does that have to be a school employee, or can that be like just somebody come out and they're only the cheer sponsor?
It has to be a school employee. It enters into the element of volunteer and the element of hardship. Can only be an assistant, cannot be the leader of the program, and that's kind of guided through the regulations. So then that creates a real constraint. We've not, we've been in different positions since I've been here, needing an assistant in other sports.
I just figured, not that that's not a sport, but it's a little bit different. Like,
Right.
we have 3 Pee Wee coordinators.
Pee Wee coordination is through football, basketball, and basketball. So you got a girls' basketball and a boys' basketball coordinator. I think they were splitting it. I added the third, isn't that right, Coach, that you were looking at a volleyball program, is that correct?
Pee Wee volleyball?
I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, they already did some this fall.
Yeah, and
basketball.
we're actually kind of behind. There's a lot of them doing it.
I think that'd be really neat.
You want to comment on that, Coach?
Can you unmute him or? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'll repeat if they can't hear you, but go ahead.
Well, we had football for $2,000. We had basketball for $2,000, but when we started looking at it, basketball has more games at different places and trying to split up and that kind of thing. that's the reason we increased both basketball
2,000.
to 2,000.
Okay.
So I don't see an increase on
For
that.
example, Coach Dent and Coach Mungo split the $2,000. So for $1,000, which is $600 to a person, they were having to, travel on Saturdays, 2 different places, trying to make it work. And it's tough. They didn't ask for it, we just came up with it.
So the only thing that might be an error is I need to make sure that the board is aware that as you move forward, that would be a $1,000 increase because you're now moving each of those to 2,000 where they were currently splitting 2,000, getting 1,000 apiece. So you are adding an additional 2,000.
Yes, another person.
Right.
Okay.
And then
I
volleyball
think that's fair.
played 2 games last year for Pee Wees, and this year she's trying to get a fuller schedule. I'm talking about probably every weekend, and then having not a volunteer, but a coordinator for that too.
So when she brings that coordinator forward, we will approve. When they get a full schedule, we would come back to the board in that regard at the point in time we have a full-blown program versus 2 games. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So right now what you're approving is the equivalence of basketball, and
Yep. I think
football.
$1,000 is fair for all those games.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So your recommendation, Dr. Murphy, is we approve the salary stipend schedule, and then we come back and revisit 44 and 45? Or at least 45,
Based on travel.
based on traffic.
The assignment would be that we would revisit this based on a board update or board action based on if we choose not to travel, then we're going to stagger the 2 amounts between senior high and junior high because there's not as many games there. So that's kind of what I'm hearing. The intention would be to approve it as is and plan to travel with junior high and senior high.
Yep.
That was my point. I would prefer them travel.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with
I
you.
mean, and typically all those, I think it probably still stands true. Statistically, your athletes miss actually very little school compared to others, so.
So, I know this is the first time the stipend schedule's been looked at in several years in terms of a major cleanup. So I'm pretty sure we don't really know where some of these original numbers came from. Like 5805 for a head football coach.
What's the time?
Sounds like
What's
it's
the
grandfathered.
5? And 1764. So my issue is with, how are we sure that, is there any rhyme or reason, is there any equity among the whole entire schedule?
Sure. Okay, so what we've done is we've tried to adopt the schedule, trying to address any and all deficiencies is there equity within the schedule? There's equity in relation to how it's been paid throughout the history. Anytime that we as a board entertain as a government structure, contractually no one can make less.
Right.
An exercise that a couple of board members alluded to that I think will begin to show any disparaging inequities would be to run what's called an index schedule. That still doesn't create a true equity because in an indexing of this schedule, if Brian is at 15 years of experience with a master's, we take his current rate of pay at that point in time times the percentage based on, he's the head football coach, the percentage of the number of days, you calculate that out as a percentage of where he's at on the salary schedule. And so then you would be able to see the formulation of percentage variations, but you can't take that as a true element of equity because Lloyd may have his doctorate, he may have his master's, and Corey is teaching with only his bachelor's, and so when we pull those percentages through, it's going to be reflective of where they're at in the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Going and looking at an index, it really cleans up the days and the amount and kind of bundles it all together. And so you as the employer could say, if you come work for us, you land here, we're going to pay you 1.3 3.2 for doing this job, and then you do that mathematical calculation, that's their total pay.
Right. And some schools in the county do that, right?
In my research, I know that Lake Hamilton does. When I first came here, I kind of approached this process because I was accustomed to doing indexes. It gave you a truer equity of how the disparagements of pay occur versus the percentages. E-Finance has a place where you must enter a stipend and you must enter the contractual days. And so Tanya would have to back out what the stipend would be based on the individual. It's not a huge mathematical challenge.
It's a little extra
It's
work.
just different.
Right.
And so as a takeaway from this, I think a next step, a healthy next step, is to at least mathematically index the current situation, and so you can see the disparities. You don't have to immediately react to them. It could be a future way of promoting the recruitment and retainment, especially on the recruitment side, because someone looking at our school, if they haven't been coaching somewhere else, may not know how to calculate a 220 contract versus the 205, and then we're going to add the stipend, then you're picking up a second sport, and we're adding 5 more days. You may not know how to calculate all that on your own.
And I don't mind it being in a flat amount like that. I just wonder,
Is it equitable?
is it, is it equitable
Well,
in terms of the amount of time spent on that particular extracurricular? Or, and I know the top part is for, the certified.
so when all the head coaches got together, when you as a board took action to extend the football pay beyond the other contractual agreements, the assumption and the understanding that all head coaches took on is they wanted to send their athletes to the weight room in the summertime, and there was an obligation that they didn't have to go to the weight room as a volleyball coach or as a basketball coach, but that head football coach is going to keep that weight room open, not only for football players, but all athletes.
Right.
And so that's how that position goes above the others. When you look at contractual days of head coaches, it's pretty equitable in the fact they're all at 220. And so in that context, they're all paying the equivalence of a stipend. So I would formulate that you see some equities within that. The things that you always consider is length of season. All programs are going to have participation in the summer to some extent. And then with that, what's the level of number of games, number of students you're supervising, weekend activities, all of that kind of creates the chemistry of the formula to formulate a plan that drives you to a point. When we got the clubs, we were kind of looking at who's going on the weekends versus who only does something during the week. Maybe they get to interact with their students in a co-curricular fashion during the school day versus having practice after school. All of those elements are contributing factors to, as I indicated, the process of trying to create how you stagger rates of pay based on, it's really not a popularity contest as much as it is the context of the amount of time and devotion that they're placing with, and groups of students. I mean, the number of students that you serve, if you're serving 12 or 14, that looks a little different than if you're serving 40 or 60 in a club environment.
Or the length of season.
And length of season. So yeah, there's multiple
there's lots of factors
that have went into it.
When you index that, you indexed it based off your base of your salary schedule, did you not? And so every time there was a base raise,
That's real.
Right.
your coaches would get a raise as well as all your teachers would get a raise.
And your administrators.
And your administrators. Everything would be indexed back to that. base.
So basically, every year that they get a raise, that index, they're getting a raise on both ends.
on both
Right,
of it,
right.
yeah.
If they're a teacher, they're a
Would
coach.
that not be a huge recruitment slash retainability?
Well,
Retaining.
mathematically, if you take an average teacher salary at that 50,000 range and you look proportionally at 3,800 or 5,000, because they're still going to get the raise on the days.
Right.
The days, they're still getting step movement, they're still getting the base rate change, so their daily rate changes. The only thing that's exclusionary is the far right column, which is that solid stipend number. And in most instances, in the coaching realm, it's between $1,764 and $5,000 plus. So they're getting the lion's share of that raise. This would help. Every little dollar helps. So
Right.
I would not discard the fact by designing it, they would get all of it, because those stipends typically will remain flat year after year after year, regardless of whether the base rate moves. And at one point in time, they probably gave a percentage raise to those stipends, which created these odd numbers that you see, because they gave they added so much money to the base, which can calculate 2% or 3%, and then they calculated each of those stipends at 3% and created these odd numbers.
Now, if you switched from, and I think this is what you're asking, if you switched from a flat stipend to an indexed number, then when their step increases their base pay, their stipend or their extra money increases because it's an indexed number, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
So they're
They
getting,
get both.
they
They
get
get both every
two
year.
kind of, two little raises or
Yes.
whatever. So
It's all
instead of-
rolled into one.
Right, because this is just a flat amount and it doesn't change
I mean, a lot of these haven't changed since,
forever.
Probably several years. Mr. Campbell and Coach Davis talked to me about the history of the schedule and the rationale behind it. And yeah, it's not been touched in quite some time. We're bringing it to your attention because I feel like we touched it, when Coach Plumley left, and I want to provide greater equity across the board and not just have a Board of Education touch a spot within the schedule. We need to look at the whole schedule to create as good and the best equity possible throughout.
Maybe we shouldn't pick and choose?
Correct.
Just out of curiosity, why is there such a difference in high school principal and middle school and elementary?
Probably a portion of that is related to duties. A portion of it is related to probably prior compensation. And the overall model of that. I kind of always check the market, and an example of that is we had a high school principal opening. Question would have been, would we have reduced the overall stipend in the departure of Donald, or do we leave it the same? If you want greater equity at the time that you have an employee leave, you either reduce it or you have to increase the others to the equivalent amount. If you look at area schools, typically a high school principal stipend will pay more than middle school and elementary school, based on graduation requirements, student drivers. There's a mixed bag of things that comes with high school administration. Not to say that the other two are not challenging and difficult, but they do feel they field those phone calls when kids do not graduate, and sometimes those are very challenging moments in the lives of parents and kids. And retention is one thing, graduation is something totally different. That's what. Would you add anything else to those comments as a high school stipend?
I think the big reason it's universal, you'll find it across the board, countywide, statewide. I mean,
Just now.
that high school seat is
He's under the spotlight.
it's hard.
No, I believe that, and I was only asking because I figured that was the case, but then when I was looking at elementaries, they were all exactly the same, and so I thought to myself, well, if that's the case, then why is the high school assistant principal not higher? So that's what I'm asking.
Excuse me?
I just got a message, the line feed froze up.
Okay.
Sorry, go to the restroom.
Anyways, I was just curious.
Anything else? Dana, did you have anything?
Nope, I'm good.
Any other comments on schedule?
Thank you for the work.
Well,
yeah, I know it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
We'll move forward with this and continue to listen. I would tell you, as a governance structure at this level, it's not something you want to continually come back to. So we're not going to repetitively re-entertain it, but I'm always willing to listen. If I find that we're gravely in error, I will come back to the board in that regard. And if we are in a position where we fail to find qualified candidates for these roles, we may have to restructure it further. So, but that's what I can tell you at this point.
Thank you for working on that.
Mhm.
So then the other thing was the schedule, right?
Yes, the hourly rate schedule.
Yeah.
You had a chance to kind of take a look at that. The biggest comment I would make there is centered around taking all of the extra duty hourly rates. Your authorization is going to allow us to pay certified employees $30 per hour for hours worked outside the contractual agreement. We're currently, it's 25. There was a couple of areas in yellow that we needed to get into the schedule that you may have questions about that we currently pay. Other than that, Mr. Campbell, the only other highlighting item is we are contemplating changing substitute rate of pay. And the substitute rate of pay that's reflected in here on sick, retired, we don't have any reflection of a change there, but if we change paying a substitute, either a classified sub or a certified sub, all of these numbers would change with that. So $65 is what we pay a substitute currently, and that's probably the lowest in the county.
A day?
A day to be a substitute, so you need to go ahead and sign up if you'd like for next year on your days off from Entergy.
It's like, no.
So what, define,
Well,
are you
you
looking
can do that
at the
as a board
section
member.
that says, yeah, sick, retired?
Mhm.
What, just define that for me a little bit? What
Okay.
is the
You wanna
CLS
take it?
You want me to
classified?
do it? Okay,
Yeah.
so the sick, so that's when you retire from the district. If you're a classified employee, the first 45 days of sick leave that you have accumulated, you get paid $100 per day, up to 45 days. If you have 90 days accumulated, you get between day 46 and day 90, you get $65 a day
Okay,
on your accumulated sick leave upon retirement.
okay,
And then the next is certified, and it's
Gotcha.
$100.
Is there a cap on those days?
90
90.
days.
Okay, I'm
It
assuming
caps
it
out at
was.
90, so there's not a
Is-
great
Is there
amount.
always,
So this
they
is-
used, okay.
So is this a retirement incentive?
It's probably more of a come to work incentive.
Okay, because
If you
there's no
work.
stipulation that when you hit this age group, you have to retire.
No.
Okay.
Well, what's the unused sick
if-
time
if-
over 90 for?
Unused sick time over 90, like if you start July 1 with 90 days, if you start June 30th, you get rolled back to 90 days. And you get paid for any days you have over 90
So 90 is the max you can carry.
over.
Okay.
So
you got
You have
more, but that's all you can
attendance.
carry.
Then we cut that person a
Right.
check, if
Gotcha.
they had 10 days they didn't go and be absent, then they get that money.
So that's why on the retirement, 90 is the cap, because you cannot get to 100, because we've already paid you for those days
Correct.
ahead of time. Okay. And we paid that at what rate? The,
65 and 85.
Yeah, but I believe I think it's tied to the,
If you look down
What line
there
is that for?
online,
Which one? The very last one, 58,
okay.
57, 58?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I hadn't gone down far enough. So unused sick, 65 and 85.
65 and 85.
And those aren't changing. We were just asking questions
Yeah,
about what they were.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
And if we come to you with it, those are based on sub pay as well. So if we come to you with a sub pay change, then it would change that, but neither one of those would be significant until next June.
Right.
When people retire or have unused sick leave.
Can we go back and revisit sub pay? You said we're currently at 65, which is the lowest in the county.
Yeah, we're gonna come to you next.
We're gonna come to you as a part of the
So we're gonna have
budget
a
planning
recommendation.
process,
Okay.
yes. We're planning to increase
I
that.
probably missed that because I was looking at.
I don't like
that.
comparing this to other schools, but Lakeside's like at 130 or 120.
Possibly for a certified, I don't know. You know, and that affects the quality of sub.
That's why these kids
Oh,
aren't
yeah.
done.
And do we use a
I
sub-service?
thought we
do
used
not?
Kelly services.
We do, but we're still required to pay the rate
We
in
said,
that context.
We set the rate with them.
We have,
Okay.
each school sets the individual rate. We will increase the individual rate. They will market the new rate going into next year.
Gotcha.
But we're not taking action tonight on substitute rate of pay, but these numbers will be modified at the bottom of this schedule in the event that we increase substitute rate of pay.
Okay. So the thing on this sheet we need to pay attention to are the yellow items
And green, right?
and the
Green.
green.
Yes. Green is new changes, which
Okay.
is going from $25 to $30 an hour. And yellow is implications that have not been added based on minimum wage requirements. We want to get into the schedule regarding hourly rates of pay. And then there was a small stipend being paid to the assistant cafeteria manager in the context of $667.50. And we have currently 3 remaining employees on our payroll based on working with Chartwells, and we'll be going to 2, I believe, because one of them's retiring.
Can we go back to that classified and certified retirement pay? How do you budget for that? Do they have to tell you at the start of the year that this is their plan? So
We have to.
you just plug a number in there?
You have to put a number in there and hope that you've got it covered.
Okay, so you just kind of have to keep the pulse of your community,
Yeah,
pulse of your
you can
staff.
poll the eligibility of staff, but once they hit years of service, you got 2 mechanisms going, because when they get 28 years of service, the eligibility, they can take a pay retirement reduction and go 27 or 26, so you may have to count those as potential retirees. But then you also have another group that enter into the T-drop, and then they are in the T-drop, and they can domino at any point in time recovering years of service, or they could go up to 10 years in T-drop. So once they're in T-drop, you pretty much have to count them into the budget.
Okay.
And then you count your 28 years of service into the budget, and then depending on how your budget is running, whether you feel it's too lean or not lean enough, that's an area where you can count 27 and 26, or only count T-drop.
Wow, that's,
But you have to define some rationale around your budgetary number.
well,
And
I understand that's where I was going with, since they don't have to tell you anything.
No.
and you know how many days they have
You do know that.
for those.
You just gotta plug in a number of how many people we're anticipating.
Right, you
And
just
I'm
keep
sure
track of
that-
how
I'm
many
sure
there are.
there's a certain percentage that each year that we know is going through retirement, so.
Right. Eligible, but may or may not.
Right, I understand.
Other questions regarding the hourly side of the schedule?
Did y'all get any, kind of feedback getting on the morning tutoring program?
You know, what I observed with it was minimal usage in terms of impact. We attempted to do that to provide additional opportunities. I don't, we tried to staff it. I don't know just exactly how effective either our before or after school tutoring is. Our hopes would be going to $30 an hour might extend additional opportunities. We have to continue to offer it, in my opinion. And if we can get more people willing to do it, then we just have to kind of monitor what a small group of effective tutoring looks like. It's really tough to determine who's going to show up, especially when you're at 7 a.m. with secondary age students, when you know full well that they'd rather be rolling in there at 9 than 7. And then, of course, many of those same kids that we're trying to entertain there are kids that typically are in extracurriculars and after-school tutoring. So there's really no strong, good time for tutoring in that approach. So any other comments regarding what you observed with the tutoring?
That's about it. And, you know, the the thing that skews us with the COVID crisis is that at crunch times toward the end of the semester is when you normally see increased usage.
Yeah,
And
I think my question would be just like, is this something structured like you're in, say, the middle of the year and you realize we told 5 people to come down here and make $30 an hour at 7 a.m. and we need 2. Can you go to that group and say, hey, we don't need all 5 of y'all down here milking the clock?
Yeah, we're not obligated contractually to extend the number of people there if there's no demand, no service, modify that. Are we going to do that monitoring every couple of weeks? No, I'd say every 6 weeks. Realistically, if I got a staff member wanting, maybe we look at like an interval that's similar to what we do with FACES. You take that same interval of time, that 7-week interval, and then restructure based on demand versus just, if you wanted to sign up for tutoring, nobody shows up, we're going to keep paying. I think that's what would need to be
I would say
Is
we
there
need to
like a
make-
sign-up sheet for the kids? or
Yeah,
anything?
get it advertised, get it out there.
there is.
There's a sign-up sheet.
And part of what happens too is that if consistently nobody's showing up for tutoring, we don't get billed for that. They just go on to their class, the teacher goes on to their classroom.
Oh, that's
They don't even turn
that's
it in.
good. Okay, so you're good.
It's not
Nobody
No.
abusing.
they're not hammering us on that.
Right.
Okay. No more questions? Okay, so it's 2 motions, right? So, the first one was a motion to approve the 2020-2021 stipend.
I have another question.
Sure, yeah.
What was the parental involvement?
That's
You want to address that?
Yes, sir. That's required by state statute that we pay people to be parental involvement coordinators. And so for the most part, they're tied to our media specialist in I believe, every place except maybe the elementary. The elementary, I think it's Miss Davis.
I think you're right.
And they have to do very specific parental coordinator, parental involvement activities each year and do the paperwork for that, and we have to pay.
Basically, they contact parents and they have like parents involved, like a committee of parents, and then some people from the school.
And like the
And there was
literacy
meetings,
night
there's
that we
meetings,
had,
yeah.
that was
Okay.
that was a
I've had to
small-
involve parents, pretty much. They have, it's like a book of
Yeah.
stuff, or
That they
staple
have to-
papers of just ways to involve parents, which is really cool.
But these are our teachers, this is,
This is the coordinators, right?
Yes.
This is not parents being paid.
No.
right,
It's
so it's our
Yeah,
staff.
yeah, that's what I'm
It's
talking
employees within the district.
Right, but it's getting information out or whatever.
Yes.
it needs to be.
And in coordination, per statutes, coordinating meetings with parents. It's not just about putting trifolds in a, yes, we do that. We put the brochures out, we put the parent resources out, but we actually have to coordinate meetings at different times of the year and say, okay, how's the communication strategy
Right.
working? What's not working? What do you think maybe that could, what have you heard from parents? And so it's a tool, parents can have a seat at the table to have input. And it's probably, in my opinion, I've attended some of the meetings just to see who shows up and whether it be time of day, advertisement, it's a challenge to get parents to come in and participate. But that's welcome. We really would welcome expanding that.
Got it? Yep. Okay, so the motion is to approve the 2020-2021 stipend schedule and hourly certified additional pay schedule. So do we vote on those individually? Because there's 2 different, okay. So again, let me just recap. Motion to approve the 2020-2021 stipend schedule and hourly certified additional pay schedule. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 5-0.
Ready to move on? Motion to adopt the resolution of formation of the Fountain Lake School District Institutional Law Enforcement Agency for the year 2020-2021 school year.
Dr. Murphy, you've talked a little bit to each of us about this, so do any board members have any questions? Could you kind of give us like a recap?
Yeah, I'll give you a recap. First and foremost, for anyone that's still following with us online, the formation of the Institutional Law Enforcement Agency, item the CA, is that item link really creates the framework for us to go forth to the Arkansas State Police through statutory provisions in the last 2 years, has allowed for school districts to work in coordination with state police and formulate a plan to go out and employ a resource officer on a local level that would provide governance for the school district. So that's the initial formation of the plan. Item CAI, the first I, is really the standards and statutes of governance that would indicate what you're required to put into place. And so our policies that we have linked in are in conjunction with the standards and statutes. So the policies are linked in an item III. And then a couple of other things that, that I would share with you in a comparison. We have partnered with Garland County in the past. I think the history of the Fountain Lake School District is probably some type of an officer partnership going on 6+ years, maybe 7. Mr. Campbell has been overseeing the funds that have paid to the officer, and since the inception of the partnership, we've seen an increase roughly of 24% in the program. We're currently budgeting and approved last year between the salary of the officer and the vehicular expenditure that we kind of discussed prior to entering our agreement last May or June. We were budgeting roughly $62,500 towards a payment to the county. And so what we've looked at here in structuring reoccurring costs, not one-time incurred costs, but reoccurring cost, a proposed budget and salary, we think in the neighborhood of $65,000 as a budgetary line item in the event that we employ this officer in the middle of the current pay schedule as an estimate. He's kind of thrown up on the board the overall budget in that context. So that budgetary schedule coinciding with a job description, we researched other school districts in the state of Arkansas that have already taken this step to do their own police department. This is the job description is reflective of what other schools are assigning to the resource officer. If we have this individual employed through us, we have the flexibility to extend the day, potentially comp a portion of the day. The other component that I would tell you is that we're still going to need to partner with the county. We have events on our campus that is going to require supervision at a level where our officer and county officials will work with each other to supervise. For instance, the Hot Springs football game will probably require 5 to 6 officers to oversee that event. If that game, next time that game's at home, we had it at home this past year. That's an example of where we're going to need contracted services from the county that far exceeds our school resource officer. This does not diminish the relationship with the county. I have talked to Sheriff McCormick back in the wintertime regarding this incident. Hayden and I have researched how we strengthen communication with Bo Robertson and 911. That's an area that's going to be a pretty significant one-time cost. We think in the neighborhood of $20,000 to upgrade our communication systems so that we have no latency. When we make a 911 call, we get immediate response time and it doesn't get funneled through a third party to then contact the county. It gives us direct access, and that would be specifically if we're saving lives in the event of an active shooter. That's we want to have that immediacy in the communication threshold. So we want to design a direct line of communication. The other components of one-time expenditure would be a weapon. Reoccurring expenditures would be ammunition. All of those enter into the supply areas. So this individual officer would receive their training through the Arkansas State Police. We would pay for mileage. He'd go up, take whatever number of days. We'd pay for the stay overnight. He'd do all of his training with the state police. If we engaged in extensive, if you recall, for some of you who've been on the board, we had Strategos do a presentation on active shooter. Mm-hmm. If we did something like that, that would be above and beyond the training that the state police provide. So if we do any active shooter training with our staff in terms of how they protect children, how they, how we educate employees around that type of an event. Of course, this individual would lead and Strategos would teach alongside that individual. Point being, that would be an additional training outside the boundary of the required hours by the state police department. So that's kind of a generalized overview. Cutter and Jessieville were both in coordinated partnerships with the county. Jessieville is just ending their first year of trying to coordinate their own department. They've learned a lot. Mrs. Spears feels like that, any errors that they made in the process, they've taken a course correction. We'll want to monitor this very closely, modify and adapt as needed. As I've indicated to some of the board members, I would tell you first and foremost, the quality of the person that we employ will determine the success or failure in the program.
I'm going to say that is the entire key to the success of the program.
Right.
Can I ask a question while it's on my mind because of that? So did that number you threw up, you're looking at like 40,000 probably being the initial hiring number?
Right.
Since you've dealt with it, Mr. Campbell, where does that put us as far as being attractive to like a 5-year or a?
That I don't know, because the sheriff's office assigned us someone, and so salary and benefits were running between 50 and then bumped up to 60, 65. And that was with one with less experience at the end than the first one.
I would tell you that it really will depend on whether we can get somebody that still is wanting to engage in a different capacity that could potentially be, it's a different retirement system. So if we could engage a retired officer, this threshold of pay would be very attractive. If we are trying to compete currently with the county, we may struggle to lure at the same rate of pay in that regard. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'd say our schedule is slightly lower than probably the county's schedule, but not by much. Originally, the schedule that Tanya put together started at 40, and I think I run this schedule back and kind of started it at 35. I would tell you that we're seeking authorization to begin this process. If we're serious about doing this, we'll do a comparative analysis specifically on salary to find that midpoint of recruitment, retainment, and as soon as we announce that we're pursuing this department, we'll have a pretty good feel for the level of interest. Mm-hmm. And then we can begin to finalize the formulation of the duty. Instead of boxing ourselves in, this is kind of a range of salary that we're thinking in that context.
In that salary schedule, it shows step 1 is at 37.5. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're proposing to bring them in at? Or is that based on their years of police experience or what?
Yeah, that would be, if they come in and they've got 15 plus years of experience, they're not going to come into school resource officer step 1. They're going to come in pretty much top of the schedule.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Did Jessieville hire and retire?
They hired a retired officer, and their schedule is actually much lower than ours.
Okay.
Yeah, some comments I'll add to. This is I wouldn't say a new thing for the state of Arkansas now. We've had many schools go this route. That being said, the chief of police board gives us very good vetting resources. So the applicant pool that may apply, then we may take 4 out of there. Not saying that the chief of police board tells us who we hire, but they will vet those people for us, or that employer or officer. They can reach out to for our departments, for our chiefs, make those contacts, and then so that discussion will go on.
Because they have a ranking system with law enforcement officers that creates the degree of quality, and they look at their PR skills, aggressive, all of that enters into creating their rating as an officer in that regard. Another thing I did not mention that I had several questions from the board, we did reach out to our insurance company, and as Arkansas, we do have full sovereign immunity as a public entity, and so we would be exempt from any
Liability.
That was my biggest.
and so that's a plus, because I talked to a couple of you about doing a rider, an additional element of
That's what I was
coverage.
gonna ask you. where
And
that
so
was.
we do have that cleaned up to know that it's not necessary, and our best approach is to just use the statutes that exempt us from any liability
Yeah,
there.
and the insurance commission frankly said we don't sell a product
No.
because it's not needed.
They sold it for out-of-state travel,
Out-of-state travel, we could get something, but they even advised that
not to do
was.
that.
They said you could get a liability, a general liability for a $10 million general liability policy. And then sovereign immunity would kick in on anything over the 10 million, but you'd pay a deductible every time somebody stubbed a toe.
Well, what kind of put me at ease on this is, you said at any time we can pull it in the county.
Excuse me?
You said at any time we could pull it. If we decided not to go through with this after getting more into it, the county would still take us back, basically.
Oh, yeah, they would, but I wouldn't want you to think they do it mid-year.
No, right.
Because they're under a different, I think, fiscal cycle even than what we are. I think they're a calendar year versus, we're at July 1. So, I mean, yeah, but all we need to do is notify them. I've been in continuum communication, under Sheriff Lawrence, others. We've got a very good rapport with our county, and that we don't want to lose that as a component of where we're at as a school district. We want to maintain a very healthy working relationship.
There's only 2 other schools in the county that run their own police force, is that Jessieville and Cutter Star?
What Hamilton does is they, I think, hire one from the county, and the others they hire on their own.
Right, that's right.
So Lake Hamilton's doing some of this.
Hot Springs has their own.
Okay, so it's not like we're gonna be out there by ourselves.
No.
Well, the thing, like Hot Springs, they have their own, but they also have a unit,
Well,
Hot Springs unit on site.
Like
But
Hamilton,
that
they
in
mix,
Hot-
they
they
get
do that in
both.
Hot
And I
Springs.
think Lakeside is
They
starting
do that
their
in Hot
own.
Springs.
Well, Lakeside's got it too.
Lakeside has a partnership. Each
So
of them
Hamilton.
have worked kind of in conjunction with, everybody just worked solely with either the city or the county. And then when this statute evolved, then schools began to explore it because it gives you greater flexibility as a school in terms of how you utilize that resource officer. So what we're seeing is all schools beginning to either have a hybrid of county and city partnerships with local entities, or and it's all based on school size.
Right.
A Cutter or a Fountain Lake is not going to need oversight beyond a singular person. So some of those larger schools
I'd say
are
right
doing
now.
a little of
Right now.
both. Well, if we continue to grow, or if we felt like the environment was not the conducive in the direction we're taking it.
But this is not the sole answer, because you said there will be times that we're going to go out and contract
Oh,
other
yeah.
surfaces.
Yeah,
For
ball
events.
games.
For ball games.
Events.
I understand.
Definitely during
This will give us
events.
more flexibility during the day.
Correct.
Well, and he talked to a police officer, which helped me too, that I never thought about, is this individual, we got the ability, they're not gonna be pulled away by the county.
Correct.
They're
They're here all the time. The county right now could pull our resource officer in the middle of the day because there's something going on Highway 128.
Right. And
we're
that's
left with
happened
nothing.
Yeah, that's
several
one,
times.
that's
to
one
us
of
in
the
past.
biggest things. Being in Garland County, the county may go all the way up towards Lake Hamilton, or Airport Road. Lake Hamilton go all the way up toward 298. So there's multiple times Butcher was pulled to respond at 298. And that's, there's hour and a half of his day, with us no one here too.
Right.
And we've talked, there's a lot of stuff we'll have to do as a school. I mean, transporting kids or people to the county, they're not going to come get them. That type of stuff we'll have to figure
Yes.
out.
Yeah, let's just mention that publicly in the context of, we're not doing, if you look at those policies, we're not doing chase and pursuit. We're going to shift an Equinox as more of a vehicle for transport with children, principals doing home visits. What we're seeking is the context. We talk to the principals. If we have kids that aren't parking where they need to be and this person wants to oversee that, we're not writing tickets. It becomes a disciplinary referral. So, when you look at the jurisdiction element of this, we'll have to engage our partnership with the county and the arrest measures. Doesn't mean that we couldn't assist to hold based on the policies that we have, but we would have to be in a true partnership with the county to transport. We would have the other thing would be an evidence locker that would be locked. Typically if we have an incident that's a violation of the law, it's typically marijuana, a controlled substance, and so we'd have a safe, secure place to hold that evidence until that could be released to the county in that regard. So that's kind of the framework. But this is definitely not someone, a disadvantage. If you want to pick it apart, is you get somebody that blows through here that really needs to be stopped during dismissal. He'd have to get make, model, and number, and so we'd report that to the county. They try to get in pursuit, whereas if we have Butcher in a position or the officer, they could actually pursue where we couldn't. But that's an example of maybe where, but those incidents are very few and far between.
Yeah.
Very isolated. Number of arrests that we conduct here on the campus is very minimal. In that context, we've had some incidents at Saturday events. Sometimes we got to extend for these Pee-wee events and other related events. Need to have support there. And sometimes we've had issues at some of those. We typically have found that we've had more issues at our extra events than we have had during the regular school day.
Parents behaving badly.
Yeah.
I've never heard of such.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the motion is to adopt the resolution of formation of Fountain Lake School District Institutional Law Enforcement Agency for the 2020-21 school year. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
0 no's. Motion carries 5-0. And then this is just the schedule and the description. So Brian, if you'll read that motion.
Motion to adopt the Fountain Lake School District Institutional Law Enforcement Agency standards and statutes, proposed budget and salary schedule, policies and job description.
And so we've covered all that.
That's my fault, I didn't read them together earlier.
So again, the motion is to adopt the Fountain Lake School District Institutional Law Enforcement Agency standards and statutes, proposed budget and salary schedule, policies and job description. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, before we move to D, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
I got it.
Yes?
Yeah. 5-minute break.
5-minute break.
Yeah,
So we'll take a 5-minute break and then.
We'll keep the live stream
We are at motion D, which appears to be 3 and 1 here, so I'll read, motion to approve the installation of the K1 awning for the amount of $72,905 by Moser Construction LLC. Motion to approve the installation of the high school roof for the amount of $111,140 by Metal Roof Pros. And motion to approve the purchase of a 2019 Suburban LT for the amount of $38,543 from Allen Tillery Chevrolet.
Okay, so let's start with the first motion. I know Hayden, you talked to us quite a bit, Dr. Murphy, on the K1 awning. Do any board members have any questions?
Looks good. I think we talked about that.
Yep. Okay, if there's not any questions, the motion is to approve the installation of the K1 awning for the amount of $72,905 by Moser Construction LLC. All in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed, motion carries 5-0. The next one is the installation of the high school roof. Any board members have any questions?
And that was originally, weren't we thinking like 200 and something?
Way cheaper than what we thought.
That was just a guess for me, you know.
No, never mind, no wonder.
You know, I started this new position 3 years ago now. We're going into 3 years, and I did a library roof, and I saw where it came in at. So a roof at 50,000 square foot, I didn't know. So
You just prepare us for work. See, now we're all excited.
Well,
because it's so much less.
I will say the winning bid, that was a tips taps vendor, so we did not have to go out for bid, but I chose to anyways, just to have, competitive prices. HRI bid on that, and it was $253,000. So that was way up there. HRI, Harness Roofing, they're out of Little Rock. We had AAA Roofing, which came in very close. They were only $1,200 higher than the winning bid. And then I had Metal Roof Pros do a competitive bid as well. That came in at $111, and with the rest of it is there. So that's who we were going to award the bid to if approved.
So if we did this, when would this be done?
They would probably start mid-June. Would be my assumption.
And is that, I meant to ask that on the K1 awning, when are they going to start that?
As soon as I give them a go ahead for
Okay.
this, our only worry is metal sourcing.
I was
Yes.
wondering about supply.
Jay is very confident in getting it done before the start of school. Again, he is doing a lot of just regular metal sheds, kind of what we did at the bus garage.
Uh-huh.
And sourcing red iron is very difficult right now. So we believe if we start on this now, it will definitely be completed. So that's what I would say.
Is it a shingle roof now?
The hospital has a shingle roof. Yeah, so there's, and two, that price is, you look at residential roofs, almost that same size versus commercial. Anything over 50,000 square foot for a roof has to go to ADE, not for approval. They'll give you guidelines to follow. So that's the guidelines I used to put out for the bid. And part of that was a bubble radiant layer, and normally that's good enough for a residential home, but they require a synthetic layer as well. So there's money involved in that, but that's just part of any square footage over 50,000 square foot has to have that.
No, that's fine, but that doesn't include if they gotta do any kind of, do we have any fascia and gable repairs to be made or decking?
I've walked the roof. There's one soft spot that we are aware of. Kind of on the middle school side of the high school roof, maybe where the lounge used to be or the conference room is now. We're hoping it's just decking. And it may be something else, but they will contact us and send us pictures before we move forward on that. So,
Have we had leaks in that area?
not in that area. That is the original roof, architectural shingles for 30 years, and we've gotten every bit of. We started having leaks. My first 2 years doing it, we didn't have any leaks in there. Very few. This last year, we've seen a bunch of leaks in that building.
So it's time.
It is very much so time. We did the roof survey report last school year through Phillips. They were out of Little Rock, and they surveyed all of our roofs. That's kind of what landed us where we're at today. And this is the biggest, the roof that they said 1 year or less. So it needs it.
And I would echo, be mindful that we have a capital improvement plan of other related items that we're nearing priority, and so we will continue to exercise additional recommendations based off of how we design our savings based on capital improvements and salaries. So, as we begin to really delve into some budgetary structure of the upcoming school year, we'll have to kind of prioritize additional capital improvements relevant to that as we kind of move forward. These items here definitely was on our priority list, and they're both items that we want to attempt to get started so we have plenty of time to get completed prior to the opening of the year.
I'll just add one more thing on the roof. We are including a 6-inch commercial gutter around the whole building. Right now it has it on the very front when you enter the building, and then on the principal side where they may enter their offices. This is going to be wrapped around the whole building. If you remember, we're being on campus, the whole back side next to that fax room, all the way through the science lab, water just pours down and hits that area hard, hits the riprap, gets on everybody. So that gutters will help for being back there.
Is that in this price?
That is in that price.
Cool.
Okay, so the motion to approve the installation of the high school roof for the amount of $1,011, $111,000, 141 by Metal Roof Pros. All in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed, motion carries 5-0. Ooh, these numbers are trying to... All right, the last one is on the Suburban LT purchase. Do any board members have any questions?
Does that come in school colors?
No, it's white.
I know. I just thought I'd ask.
What I would allude to there is we've included the vehicle fleet inventory, kind of where we're at with current vehicles we have. When we started pursuing kind of what we might put the officer in, we kind of looked at our fleet inventory, and we think this was, honestly, I didn't think Hayden would locate something of this quality and price in this time frame, but we have it available here, have it held, feel like it'd be a good addition to the fleet. The only other thing that we really are looking at for the fleet in the upcoming year that'd probably come after July 1, this expenditure will occur out of our current vehicle budget. So it'd be out of the current year budget that we hold. But we may consider with the statutory changes with CDLs, we want to give serious consideration to looking at a slightly used passenger van that would be able to haul roughly 9 to 12 to kind of get our fleet kind of where we think it needs to be, moving ourselves forward into the next year. We think these two purchases would position us well with the fleet. Of course, this purchase here is the only one that we're recommending here this evening.
Noticing on that fleet list, do we have plans to retire the GMC Yukon?
Yes. Yes.
It's looking pretty aged.
Right.
Are you interested in buying one?
No. I'm just wondering if...
I've drove
That
it
should be
in the
the-
last year, and it's still, we take it to Dawson with a group of teachers typically is where that ends up going when you can't use. Equinox will typically get us up to 2 or 3 people, 4 comfortably, 5 not so much.
Right.
Then we move towards the Yukon. We use it some for student usage for small groups. An ensemble group that's going to either perform or try out with a director. But yes, that's kind of why we're getting back into the suburban purchasing mindset is we're going to have to replenish the fleet further.
Yeah, we're getting some pretty aged vehicles in there.
Now, is it the price that you've got? I see 32,543, and then on here
Yeah, one of the sheets showed 32,000.
32 is incorrect.
Is it the mileage?
That's from the, no,
No, it says price 32,000.
that's from Alan Tillery.
From Allen Tillery.
Oh, uh-oh, we got a deal.
Mileage 32 XXX, price 32,543.
And then
Where
I
did
saw
you get
somewhere,
that?
then I saw
On
somewhere.
that attachment,
Yeah, I see it on there. I would tell you that the price we met with Gerald, went through the process, it was 38. Sun White,
That's probably my, I bet you I put it was supposed to be mileage, it's probably my guess.
you got mileage on there.
You might
but it
just,
should say 38.
I think so.
43.
I'm getting, give me just a second, but I'm pretty sure that's it.
but the price is
Price is
38.
38. Yeah,
Right.
we went down there, we
Right.
test drove it, went
Okay.
through, visited with them, so the approval price is 38. I think that's an error on the
I think that's an error.
advertisement.
Okay.
I agree.
Can we hold them to that number and I'll have to check?
That's right.
Yeah,
He's a proud supporter.
Yeah, I will say that's you know, I got on there, started looking one night and, saw that price in there. I just went ahead and did a car guru search for the whole state of Arkansas, and believe it or not, that Allen Tillery price was the lowest for 2019 in the state at that time. So we feel it's a very good deal.
good.
Okay. So the motion is to approve the purchase of a 2019 Suburban LT for the amount of $38,543 from Allen Tillery Chevrolet.
I'm just trying to, I don't know.
No, tell us.
Well, I just don't know that right now, do we need one right now, or do we, that's my only hang up on it is.
Oh, do we
I
need
know we don't
one
wanna
right
pass up
now?
the deal.
Do we need one tomorrow? No, but when we're looking at the fleet that we have currently, this fits within the scope as a fleet. It's the best purchase for us currently within the budget.
Officer.
We're going to have to equip, we're going to have to take one of these Equinoxes out of the fleet. It's going to have to be equipped. We're going to have to put lights on it. We have to take one of these and remove it. Do we have 6 weeks to pull that off? We just felt like with the pricing of, if this is one of the best prices in the state on a vehicle, that take a pass on it. Then what we don't want to buy is something that's approaching 100,000 miles. We want to get
Definitely not.
something, and then what I don't want to do is end up coming back to you and it's pushing 40 or 42.
Right.
And so average price on that vehicle with that mileage is exceeding 40,000 on a statewide basis. So that's the rationale for the purchase.
Can we find out about that 32?
I'd love to take the 32 and run with it. I'm telling you that we did the paperwork down there and sit down and talk to him, and it was what we're recommending in the bid. So, you know, you can look at that 32 all day long. What we're going to pay is 38, what's recommended.
Can you
in the
just
motion.
ask it?
That's right. I'll
You
ask.
just say, I think we saw 32
Oh, yeah, we
on there.
definitely going to
Well,
ask.
I mean, this came from them though, right?
It did. So could it be binding? I mean, we can
Well, I know
go
it-
there, you know, I mean, I'm assuming it came from them.
No,
Did it come from them or did you type
you
that?
typed it up.
Oh, you're talking about the listing on there?
Yeah.
That was me.
Well,
Yeah.
With the pictures and everything.
So
Man, you did so good on the roof and under promising,
Pictures came from Allen Tillery.
So there's nothing binding, Corey, to your savings of what you're seeking here.
I mean, it's,
And at
Look at
6
what?
point,
Because you were gonna link
with the
the
suburban
ad.
side,
But,
we're
yeah.
a 16 passenger bus or a
Van
van.
has 32.
Moving forward.
12.
I think I just put it.
I think the state of Arkansas allows up to seating 12.
12 without the CDL.
Yes.
Okay,
how
okay.
much are we looking on that?
We have just, I just told him to begin to research, but what I'm going to do there is that's going to be probably a July 1, late June type purchase. Get ourselves equipped going into the fall, because it very well could be something that we could avoid using a short bus on and expand this fleet and take a little relief off the Yukon and definitely give us something else to drive.
It looks to me we have a great need for these vehicles.
Yes. Based on
All
our
the small
mileage.
groups, unless we want to send a 50 passenger bus down the road with 10 kids on
This is gonna be essentially your vehicle.
I'm going to use this for probably a minimum of 2 years, I would think. Try to keep the mileage relatively low. If the Yukon conks out, we could roll it into the fleet immediately.
I can
If
see
we
you driving
haven't,
a 12-passenger van around.
I drove the Malibu. I drove about everything sitting out there at one time or another.
it. That Spark?
I have not drove the Spark because that is personally owned.
I'm sure he'd let you try it out, just in case. That's what you want to do next.
I had to ask.
That cargo van thing, is really starting to get very hot in all the county schools and on Mount Pine.
Well, where I
Really
see that
investing.
coming in handy is, you go back to that cheerleading.
Yes.
Hello.
Well, I mean, you look at your beta clubs, you look at your other
Right.
small clubs that we're now getting a mini bus. We're paying if the sponsor of that club doesn't have a CDL, we're paying a bus driver for driving time, seating time. So
No, I think we'll
very
save money
beneficial.
in the long run.
Oh, yes.
So let's look into that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion to approve the purchase of a 2019 Suburban LT for the amount of $38,543 from Allen Tillery Chevrolet. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 5-0. Brian, if you'll read number E, letter E.
Letter E is motion to accept the letters of resignation from the personnel below for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year. Joyce Faison, District Aide. Glenn Davis, softball coach only. Josh Wesson, head baseball coach, assistant football and classroom teacher. Katie Wesson, high school teacher, and Greg Fulton, high school math teacher.
Okay, so all the board members, you've had a chance to review the resignation letters. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so let's take a vote.
Well-
I'm sorry?
Well, it is not really a question, but I assume our search will change after this meeting with the baseball, football, Coach Weston leaving, that deal.
Yeah, well, we'll have a new extracurricular schedule to apply to whoever the employment opportunities, the vacancies have been advertised pre-meeting.
Right.
We will continue to advertise those until we have a valid applicant pool and then begin to move towards interviewing all.
Will we change those?
Will we change what?
Like
The assignments?
well, like the assistant football coach, that's changed the days. We're gonna change it on, like, how's it listed?
Usually
versus
it's
what it is
listed
now?
per salary schedule with a high and a low is what I try to encourage. So when it goes out in an advertisement, it kind of does that. But we can relist it, indicating days in the
Yeah,
contract.
because we have it listed as a 210 right now,
Right.
and it would become a 215.
You'll advertise it at 2:15.
After the schedule, so yes,
And-
that will be amended in the morning.
I got you.
I'll post it differently.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so the motion to accept the letters of resignation from the personnel below for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year. Joyce Faison, Glenn Davis, Josh Wesson, Katie Wesson, and Greg Fulton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries 5-0.
All right, we have a motion to hire the following for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year. Casey Taylor, high school Spanish teacher, ESL. Courtney Tomboli, middle school teacher. Candace Bates, middle school special education teacher. Rebecca Lambert, speech language pathologist. And Jason Nobles, high school math teacher.
Okay, so board members, you've had a chance to review their resumes. Any comments or questions? I actually do on this. Could you tell me who Courtney, is she replacing somebody? We just had someone.
Courtney, middle school,
Yes, Miss
English.
Luke,
Miss Luke, got it.
but she's actually we're gonna move Miss Dukes to 8th grade English. And so Miss Tomboli will be doing 7th grade English and social studies.
And then Candace Bates, we lost the special ed.
Mr. DeMarco,
Okay. And then speech language pathologist, remind me.
Katie Hall,
And then I remember the the Spanish.
Yes.
Okay. So the motion to hire the following for the correlating positions for the upcoming 2020-2021 school year: Casey Taylor, Courtney Tomboli, Candace Bates, Rebecca Lambert, and Jason Nobles. All in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed, motion carries 5-0. And that's all we had. So at 7:41, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.